You're gonna make me come back on YouTube. No. Welcome everyone, welcome to my channel. It's been a minute, I know. I'm really glad to see you guys, talk to you again. What we're gonna do today is something a bit different from what I've done in my previous videos. I haven't prepared anything, it's not something that's scripted, it's just me speaking to you, just talking about a subject. I had a couple of notes, so that, I can stay focused and stuff. So if I'm reading at some point on the prompter, sorry, I'm just gonna go look over there sometimes. So bear with me with that. Yeah, I just want to talk about a subject that has been in my mind for the past few months, but that always, has been with me. If you've seen my previous videos, you've seen that I talk a lot about representation and inclusion and diversity because to me that's something that's important, because it's always amazing when you can see yourself being represented on screen or in a story. It kind of makes you feel less alone and gives you agency to keep on, existing and taking up space in this world. So that's why for me, as I did with It's a Sin, every time that when something comes out, a TV show or movie, and when that said thing is rooted in representation, I always try to analyze it and be honest about it and just try and see, what it did good. Did it really bring about something different? And also where we are right now in terms of representation and inclusion and diversity. As a performer, an entertainer, a writer myself, a creator, and as a person of color, representation, inclusion, and diversity are very, very important points of my life. I don't have the luxury of not thinking of it when I'm creating. It's always important, to kind of check where all those things are at. Where are we? Are we making progress? Are we going forward? Are we moving backwards? So that's why in my previous videos, I talk a lot about, inclusion and diversity. Go see it if you haven't seen it, but yeah, I because I think that's important and that we need it to kind of keep on bringing on changes in this world, in society, because when you see yourself being reflected, represented, mirrored on screen, in all your glory and your beauty, that gives you agency to kind of take up space in the world. And that's why I think we should keep on doing that. And also, when those things are being done, like I did with It's a Sin for representation in the LGBTQ plus community, you have to analyze it as well and being honest as well to see where it did good and where it can be improved, and that's why I want to talk today about not specifically those free movies and TV shows, but I want to use them as a starting point. Maybe I'm going to make more videos on something more on them more specifically or on others, but today I want to talk about that. I'm going to talk about The Little Mermaid, the live adaptation movie that's going to come out very soon, but we saw the trailer. The Rings of Power, the Lord of the Rings sister show that's adapted from the universe of Lord of the Rings. And also The House of Dragons, which is the prequel to Game of Thrones, adapted from the book Fire and Blood by George R.R. Martin. They all have something in common. All three of them have black and brown representation to a level that we haven't really seen before in this genre and subgenre. We can't shy away from the backlash that it had. Basically there has been loads of people that has been pouring hate and anger and outrage over those free titles because they feel that these waves of representation that are going through those free movies and TV shows are detrimental to their beloved shows and movies. We know it's stupid, those are mermaids, those are elves, and or Harfoot, you can, race and color doesn't really apply there because of fantasy worlds. What I want to talk about is mostly about the writing and about what those shows are really bringing to the table in terms of inclusion and diversity. It's hard to talk about The Little Mermaid because the movie is not out yet, so I'm gonna only refer to it through its trailer and also through the stance of Disney and the adaptation, live action adaptation that has come out. But we're also gonna talk a bit deeper about Rings of Power and House of Dragon. These are not reviews. I'm not gonna do that, but just gonna talk about it all in all from what I've seen. So what I can say is that it is good representation if we take representation through its definition. Basic definition that I can say now. So it's the practice of including or involving people from a range of different social and ethnic backgrounds and of different genders, sexual orientations, and more. Okay, so that's representation. But also we need to state that representation stands closer to likeness in image and do not involve inclusion. That's what I'm gonna use when I'm talking now about, representation in the Rings of Power and House of Dragon. There is good representation, main characters are black or brown. They're important. They are lead, main supporting characters. It is good representation, and it's a varied range of representations in Rings of Power. You have like British actors, you have Puerto Rican black actors, you have African American actors, and also in House of Dragons, you have French descent, Haitian. It's very varied. But again, to me, the big issue I have with that is that because of the nature of the story itself, that it stems from, it cannot be more than just this basic representation. It doesn't go higher, it can go worse, And it's great. Again, it's good to have this type of representation, but what we need to strive for now is things being more substantial, being more important, being more grounded in something that's not just about the color of the skin, which is, but it has to be about the culture. It has to be about the people, the personalities, because we are not just a monolith. We're not just color of skin. We have so much more. The Black diaspora around the world is just so much more. The Latinx as well, South Asian, East Asian, Romani, so much diversity in our world that needs and deserves to be represented in a substantial way. And that's not what I get to see in the Rings of Power and House of Dragon. But again, it's not really their fault in a way, because to me it stems from the pre-existing stories from which it came from. This stems from stories that were written by white men in their 30s and 60s, in times when questions about race and diversity were nothing but a faint noise made by a few. In the times, those questions weren't as out there and outspoken as they are today, or 5 years ago, or as they will be more in the future. And also there's the fact that those original stories doesn't have representation in it, of people of color. They have little to none, and the little that they have are all stereotypes. You look at Game of Thrones, stereotypical, and there's none in Lord of the Rings, not really. So you're using these stories that weren't made for representation of people of color. So those stories are not meant for that. So when you're trying to create something new from this basis itself and do it in 2021, 2022, you don't have much to work with. And in a way, you can't have more than just the basic element of representation, which is what we get in Rings of Power and House of Dragons. Again, great to see black and brown actors on screen. I love those genres, and it's amazing to see that. But those are characters that could have been played by a white person if the producers felt like it, And that's why, to me, we have to talk about that. The conversation has to be about that as well, because there are things like that, genres like that, where they persist on creating, and I think that's a general issue in Hollywood, persist on creating on existing franchises, when we see, with Star Wars and Wizarding World and MCU and all that, they are creating from pre-existing stories that were created hundreds of years or maybe decades before, when people didn't give, enough chance for people of colors to create their stories. So those stories were written by white people for a white audience, and they're trying to make these relevant and representation for today. Honestly, it's silly to try to do that. I think, to me, what they should do now is focus on the inclusive part of having new creators coming on and writing those stories. It's literally taking the same risk, but giving the inception of the story to someone inside the inclusivity of what you're trying to do. Shows like Insecure, created by Issa Rae. This is inclusive. It's an inclusive story because, you know, it's from the root to what we see on screen. It was written by a person of color, her own experience, her stories, and you can see how it's different from another story. I'm not saying that we are different in that way. I'm not talking about differentiation in that way, but I'm just saying that there is a culture to being African American. There is a meaning to being a French Black woman. There is something, you know, unique to that. You cannot just throw actors of color on screen in roles that could have been played again by white people and call that change. So to me, should take example on that, and also on Quinta Brunson, who created Abbott Elementary, you know, which is an amazing TV show. If you haven't seen it, go see it. I'm probably gonna make a video about it. It's a great TV show, and this TV show doesn't feel forced. It's very subtle, but it still is good representation because it's inclusive, and the story itself feels different and feels sincere. That's the word I'm looking. It feels sincere. And unfortunately, that's not something we can get from The Rings of Power, House of Dragon, because again, the roots of the story itself, it's already pre-existing in something that's very, very far from what they're trying to achieve. Yeah, that's what I want to say about that. It's just that I prefer them using that money on financing, you know, the next Quinta Brunsons, you know, the next Issa Raes, and the people that are creating things, you know, through the lens of inclusivity and making it so that when you watch it on screen, you really see a person of color. Because that's, again, we can't run when we still have so much walking and crawling to do. I mean, we just came out of the crawling stages of, you know, trying to represent realistic depiction of society on screen, you know. We can't try to run now, you know, because we're gonna hit a wall and just, you know, crash. We need to take time to just, you know, do things, and this taking time comes from discovering and financing, you know, new creators, writers, and people that can tell those stories in a sincere way, that it's not just gonna be simple representation, just, you know, for the studios to be like, we did our job, you know. Look at Everything Everywhere All at Once. Look at The Farewell. Look at Crazy Rich Asians. If we're talking about the big names, look at Black Panther, what it did, you know. We were touched by that movie as this thing of you are being seen, and it's just beautiful. And that's because, you know, it's inclusivity, you know, it comes from the root itself. The creators are Black, so they are kind of, you know, elevating it. Circle back to The Little Mermaid. What I wanted to say about that is, again, it's not out yet, we can't really talk about it. But what I can say is that I think it's silly because they are forgetting what they did in the 90s. If you're my age, you know, you've seen Cinderella with Brandy, that was produced by Whitney Houston, with Whitney Houston as well, and Whoopi Goldberg, and, you know, several actors of color. And it was just beautiful. It was so inclusive. And again, it's a story years old, but they made it inclusive. How they did that? It's very simple, by using the culture and the lived experience and having people of color in the rooms where decision was being made. And then when you see the final print, when you see it, it's Cinderella, but with Brandy, which is a dark-skinned Black woman with locks. It's beautiful. It doesn't change much anything from the original story. It amplifies it, it beautifies it, and it's such a celebration of minorities in America through that lens, and it's just showing the beauty of all that. And that's something they did, and that's why I find it so confusing why they're like trying to do something different with all those live action remakes and stuff. So I just hope that The Little Mermaid goes more in that direction of having not just Hailey Bailey being a Black actress that's playing, you know, the part in the way that the original actress did it. I really hope that the director make it more culturally palpable. Is it possible? It's hard because, again, it was written by Hans Christian Andersen, a Danish man, in 1830, and then adapted for Disney in 89. The story wasn't made for that. To do it, to make it inclusive, you have to go to, you know, to ends that I don't think, you know, Disney wants to. There are ways, because they've done it again with Cinderella, and it was simple and subtle. It was through costumes, through music, through the way that they directed the actors, there was something that felt like Brandy was playing more than just the Cinderella that was written by the Brothers Grimm. She was playing a version that she could understand of Cinderella. And that's what I hope that they're gonna do with Ariel in Little Mermaid. And that's, to me, what's important to talk about, you know, with those things, because in the end, when it comes out, we should sit down and just say, okay, what did it do? You know, it just represented so many little girls. But then if we can give them that little plus, that little thing that's more, and then they can come out of the movie not just with the image of the representation, with something else as well, you know, that they've learned, that they can feed on, and just, again, to just go there and take space. That's what inclusion must be, you know, just make you feel like, you know, you matter. So that was my little talk. I tried to make it mean something. So just let me know in the comments down below what you think of it. Again, it's just a discussion. It's not a video essay about something like specific and pointed. So it's not, again, it's my point of view. It's what I think of it. So just let me know what you think of it. Please stay kind, because everything I say comes from a place of love and a place of change and evolving and of light. So let's stay this way. I'm also planning on doing a couple of reaction videos. Just let me know. So give me a thumbs up if you liked it. Please subscribe. Love you guys, and don't forget to dream and take up space. I see you soon. Bye.